The burden of proof is a fundamental concept in logic, philosophy, and law that determines who is responsible for providing evidence to support a claim or assertion. It refers to the obligation of the person making a claim to provide sufficient evidence or justification to convince others of the truth or validity of that claim. The burden of proof shifts depending on the context, the nature of the claim, and the norms of the relevant domain. Default position and claim. In any debate or argument, there is typically a default position or status quo that is assumed to be true until evidence suggests otherwise. The burden of proof rests on the party making a claim that deviates from this default position. Assertion and evidence. When someone makes a claim, they are asserting that something is true, exists, or should be accepted. The burden of proof requires them to provide evidence, reasoning, or justification to support their claim. Standards of proof. The level of evidence required to meet the burden of proof can vary depending on the context. In criminal law, for example, the burden of proof is typically beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning that the evidence must be sufficient to convince a reasonable person of the defendant's guilt. In civil cases, the burden of proof is often preponderance of the evidence, meaning that the evidence must show that it is more likely than not that the claim is true. Shifting the burden. In some cases, the burden of proof may shift from one party to another. For example, in a debate, if one party makes a claim and the other party refutes it, the burden of proof may shift back to the original claimant to defend their position. Presumption and rebuttal. The burden of proof is closely tied to the concept of presumption. By default, claims are presumed to be false or unproven until evidence is provided to establish their truth. Once evidence is presented, the burden shifts to the opposing party to rebut or refute that evidence. Logical fallacies. Failing to meet the burden of proof can result in logical fallacies such as argumentum ad ignorantium, appeal to ignorance, where someone argues that a claim is true simply because it has not been proven false, or argumentum ad populum, appeal to popularity, where someone argues that a claim is true because many people believe it. Understanding the burden of proof is crucial for critical thinking, reasoned debate, and the evaluation of claims and arguments. It helps ensure that assertions are supported by evidence and that conclusions are based on rational inquiry rather than unfounded beliefs or assumptions.